trading across the seas. They would be the sea merchants, the ones that were taking all of these goods, these wares, and transporting them from port to port and selling, picking up new, trading, all of that sort of thing. Now Zebulun, we know even less about than Issachar. When Moses did his census, they were at 57,400 men. And back to Deuteronomy. Remember, I said keep your finger there. Deuteronomy 33. And the Zebulunites are mixed in with the Issacharites. Okay, it's so we are going to verses 18 and 19 again. Deuteronomy 33, 18 and 19. And of Zebulun he said, rejoice, Zebulun, in thy going out. And then in verse 19, they shall call the people unto the mountain. There they shall offer sacrifices of righteousness, for they shall suck in the abundance of the seas and of treasures hidden in the sand. Okay? They are the reason why their blessing from Moses was really tied in and almost done at the same time with each other was because they were going to be consistently working with each other. Okay, they were always, in a way, going to be together. One could not really, you could say one could not survive without the other. That is why the Moses blessing is really tied together for both of them in the same two verses. The next son is Gad. He was the first son born to Jacob and Zilpah. Okay, that is Leah's handmaid. Gad had 7 sons. Eri, Ziphion, Arodi, Areli, Hagi, Ezbon, and Shuni. This is once again another son that we don't know a whole lot about, kind of along the lines of Zebulun. Let's go real quick back to Genesis chapter 49. Genesis 49 and verse 19. Very short verse, and this is all we see of Gad here. Gad, a troop shall overcome him, but he shall overcome at the last. Now let's go ahead and turn real quick to 1 Chronicles. You will not need to leave this one marked because this is the only time we are going to be coming here. 1 Chronicles chapter 5. So Gad was going to be, the Gadites would be a war tribe, okay? They were going to mainly be soldiers. And as the blessing goes, as we just saw in Genesis 49, of course, it says at first they would be overcome. However, they would be victorious in the end. 1 Chronicles chapter 5, I'm going to read a few verses here, beginning in verse 18. The sons of Reuben and the Gadites, and half of the tribe of Manasseh, of valiant men able to bear buckler and sword, and to shoot with bow, and skillful in war, were 44,703 that went out to war. And they made war with the Hagarites, with Jeter and Nephish and Nodab. And they were helped against them, and the Hagarites were delivered into their hand, and all that were with them, for they cried to God in the battle, and he was entreated of them, because they put their trust in him. And they took away their cattle, of their camels 50,000, and of sheep 250,000, and of asses 2,000, and of men 100,000. For there fell down many slain, because the war was of God, and they dwelt in their steads until the captivity. So what we are seeing there in First Chronicles, if you were to do a study of the Gadites, what you will see, and the only time that they are mentioned, other than when lineages are spelled out, it was always war. Okay? They were a tribe of soldiers. And that is the way it was always going to be. And typically, up until that one account we just read in First Chronicles, all of these small battles, they typically lost. Okay? And as they were going through those battles, though, the one thing that if you were to do this study and look at every single battle that's mentioned, even when it's just briefly, you never see anything mentioned of God in those battles. But this one, it specifically says that they did it because they put their trust in God. Okay? So just as the blessing spelled out, Jacob's blessing spelled out that they would be overcome in the beginning. In the end, they would be victorious. And I can tell you just by reading there in First Chronicles a good indication of why that was. Those first battles they tried doing in their own strength, not relying on God. There very well may have been pride in that fact because they were known as good, strong soldiers. Okay? Well, not to get off topic too much, but who was one other strong soldier that everyone feared? Well, I was going to say, there was a little boy that took him out. What was the difference? That little boy had God on his side. Everyone feared the giant Goliath, except that little boy, because he said, there's only one I fear, and that's God. Yes. And anyways, back onto this. Moses' census, a little bit smaller, and it could be due to wars, but a little bit smaller. They were at 45,650 war-age men. And then back to Deuteronomy. I'm keeping you guys busy tonight. Deuteronomy 33, verses 20 and 21. And of Gad he said, Blessed be he that enlargeth Gad. He dwelleth as a lion, and teareth the arm with the crown of the head. And he provided the first part for himself, because there, in a portion of the lawgiver, was he seated. And he came with the heads of the people. He executed the justice of the Lord, and his judgments with Israel. What we are seeing in Moses' blessing there is the first part, the first verse, verse 20. He was really the blessing. Okay, the verse 21 was not really a blessing. Verse 20 was where he was saying that the Gadites, even though they were one of war, would become a very large and wealthy tribe. And then in verse 21, Moses is just telling a little bit about what they did, how they went to war, they lost, but in the end, they would overcome, just like in what we saw in Jacob's blessing as well. Now, the son that we're going to finish up with tonight, we know a little bit more about. And that is Asher. Asher was the second son born to Jacob and Zilpah, Leah's handmaid. He had 4 sons and 1 daughter that are mentioned. Imnah, Ishvi, Beriah, and the girl's name was Sarah, spelt with E's instead of A's. So, looking at, Genesis chapter 49, looking at Jacob's blessing for Asher. This is one that I did not write down in my notes. Verse 20, thank you. Verse 20. A small, and once again, very small like Gad, but we know more about Asher. Verse 20 in Genesis 49. Out of Asher his bread shall be fat, and he shall yield royal dainties. Now when I first looked at when I first read this verse, okay, it's just like, okay, he's going to be wealthy, and they're going to have everything they want in the sense of royalty is going to come from them and all this sort of thing. Actually, no. That is not the case. That is not what it is saying here. What we are seeing, well, first of all, the Asherites, yes, would be a fat tribe in the sense of they would be very wealthy off the land. Where it comes and it is talking about royal dainties. Now, when I think of royal dainties, it's there's many things that come to mind, but it's just like nothing really makes sense when you first read it that way. Royal dainties is referring to food.
They were chefs.
They were chefs. Okay? They were the people, they were the tribe that provided food, especially to essentially you could say everybody, okay? But they were even going to be trusted for supplying the food to royalty. Okay? Which means there's a lot of trust in that. And also what comes with, if you're supplying pretty much anything to royalty, obviously you're going to get paid very well. If your food does not, if your food keeps the royal people healthy and fat, you will get paid with a nice fat check as well. And that is what we are seeing.
You get fed well too.
Yeah.
That's why they were fat.
That's why.
Yeah.
They had to touch it,
Well, yeah, true. Yeah. So we've learned a little about from Jacob's blessing, but we learn a little bit more about the Asherites actually from Moses' blessing. As to even more into what they were into. They were into even a little bit more than just food. First of all, the census that Moses did, they were even smaller. They were 41,500 men. But going to Deuteronomy chapter 33 again, we're going to verse 24. And of Asher he said, let Asher be blessed with children. Let him be acceptable to his brethren. Let him dip his foot in oil. Thy shoes shall be iron and brass, and as thy days, so shall thy strength be. That is, excuse me. That is the blessing from Moses. First of all, one thing that we are seeing is, like I had mentioned, okay, when Moses did the census, when Moses did the census, okay, they were one of the smallest tribes at that time. Okay, but when Moses gave his blessing, when Moses was on his deathbed, okay, one thing that you notice in verse 24, let Asher be blessed with children. That is not just saying, oh, you're going to have kids. Okay, it went beyond that. He's saying you are going to be a very large tribe. Many are going to come from you. And, but also at the same time, when you are, even though they're going to be a very large tribe and such, let him be acceptable to his brethren. We see in verse 24, they were going to be also a very meek and humble tribe, which in turn would cause people to like them. Meaning, what's the best way, okay, for your tribe to truly flourish and get bigger and bigger and bigger? If everyone likes you, they're not going to go to war with you, thus, killing people, making the tribe smaller or whatever. So, then we get more into how they would also be wealthy. First part, the very end of verse 24. Let him dip his foot in oil. What we're looking at in that area where the Asherites came from, it is very well known for the people as far as husbandry in olive trees, olive oil. Oil was a very important part of that culture, and used a lot. In fact, at times, olive oil would be used or could be used in place of money. If somebody, say they were a fairly poor family in sense of money, what they could do, if they happened to have passed on to their family, they kept some, they had some trees where they produced olives. They could take the oil that they made from the olives to be able to go to market and buy the stuff they needed. They could actually use that olive oil as money. That is how precious olive oil was to them. And that is one of the things that we know particularly about the Asherites, is their husbandry in olive oil. And then the next verse, verse 25, thy shoes shall be iron and brass, and as thy days, so shall thy strength be. Boy, I thought my winter boots and my work shoes to fit my size feet were heavy. Imagine if your shoes were made of that. No, it's not what it's saying. This is telling something else about the Asherites, okay, of what they were into. It was not just the food side of things as well, okay? They were also into mining, okay? Many different tribes and people, they focus in on one thing, okay? Say one thing from the ground. Like you would think, olive oil, that's going to bring them a decent amount of money. They worked stuff above ground and below ground, okay? So they were also into mining. Now, one thing about iron and brass, though, it goes even a little bit further in, and that's what the second half of verse 25 is saying. As thy days, so shall thy strength be. When referring to iron and brass, and then it goes on to say, and as thy days, so shall thy strength be. Iron and brass, when cared for, can last a very long time, okay? And that is what it is saying about the Asherites too. One thing that would be known of this tribe is old age. But not just old age. When you have brass, okay, especially brass, brass is a good one since it's mentioned here. You take care of brass. Even though it's a little bit of a softer metal, you take care of it. It doesn't matter if that brass is 2 days old or 200 years old. It can still shine and be beautiful, okay? And that is what we see with them. They would be a strong people even in old age. And because of that, you can also surmise that they, as the old saying goes, they aged like fine wine, okay? You know, as in, they did not, they didn't age like milk. Okay? You know, as they got older, they did not lose their strength. They would not lose their vitality. And in fact, this can be seen many, many generations later. Turn to Luke. Luke chapter 2. Luke chapter 2 and verse 36. And there was one Anna, a prophetess, the daughter of Phanuel, of the tribe of Aser, which actually is Asher. Later on in years, you could say, shortened their name. I don't know why they want to take just one letter out, but this is speaking of the same tribe, okay? She was of a great age and had lived with a husband 7 years from her virginity, and she was a widow of about 64 years, which departed not from the temple, but served God with fastings and prayers night and day. And she, coming in that instant, gave thanks likewise unto the Lord, and spake of him to all them that looked for redemption in Jerusalem. Now, like I said, Anna is this one where I'm mentioning her just briefly tonight because she comes from the Asherite clan, from the Asherite tribe, okay? But we can see, even through her, this blessing that they would be not just old age, but they would be strong even in their old age, okay? Now, any time that I have read this account of Anna, I look at it and I get stuck. And one thing that stands out to me in verse 37, she was a widow of about 84 years. Oh, she was 84 years old. No. She was well past 84. I can't tell you how it was that I missed that. She had been a widow for 84 years. She had been married for 7 years before that. So you are up to 91, and then we don't know for certain exactly her age when she got married, which in that culture,
14, 15.
I was going to say, it's as low as, I believe, if I remember right, it's 13. So, I mean, you're looking at, even if she was at that youngest age allowed, which if I remember right was 13, you're looking at 91, that's 101, that'd be 114. At a minimum, she was 114 years old, and from what we can tell, she was still very active in the temple.
Yeah.
Okay? It wasn't something where she was bedridden and all she did was pray and she lied there. Like I said, we will do it at some other point. We will do a more in-depth look on Anna, but that is one thing that we can see from her, that truly you can see that blessing play out all these generations later. That blessing truly did pan out when it comes, especially when it comes to the being strong in old age part. Imagine being, I can't even at what many of you would call my young age, I can't imagine being as active as she was and being well over 100 years old. You know, what was it that really kept her going? Well, partly due to the blessing, but also, I guess you'll just have to wait until whenever it is, we look at Anna. How's that a cliffhanger? It's not a thing. I'll come back next week and you'll find out. when we get to her. I guess that just means you're just going to have to keep coming until we get to her.
Yeah.
Okay? So those are the 4 sons, the 4 tribes that we looked at tonight. I hope I did a decent job at trying to keep it not quite so much of a classroom, school classroom sort of feel. But like I said, I wanted us, since these are the heads of the 12 tribes, I wanted you to understand and learn the different blessings and how those tribes played out in their, see what their roles were, and also essentially in the expanding, really, you could say, of the world, even as we know it today. You know, to be honest, as I've been doing this too, I have, if I had the time for one, which I don't, I would be really interested to try and see if I could trace my lineage and see if it's possible to see where I came in there. But anyways, any questions on these, on any of these tonight? I feel like it was fairly straightforward and black and white, but
Just a comment
yes.
that 104 is not unheard of in these days. But
Right.
in those days, 104 was absolutely crazy.
Right.
You know,
Yeah.
I mean, typically 70 was old at that point, I think.
Right, yes. Yes. Now, I mean, like you said, it is getting to be more common, but even though it's become more common, if you see somebody, meet somebody, even if they are what we would call a lively 100-plus-year-old person, what does that lively mean? You know, yeah, they're breathing, they have a smile on their face. You know, their minds might still be sharp, but her body was also still sharp and strong, even at her age. I guess it's time to go because my mic is not giving feedback. So have a quick word of prayer and then we'll dismiss. Heavenly Father, Lord, I thank you for tonight and thank you for these that have come out tonight. And Lord, I thank you for, Lord, your word, everything that we can learn from it. And these that we looked at tonight, Lord, I thank you for their place in the developing world, Lord. I just thank you for your wisdom and how you saw to it for the different blessings and for these tribes, and just your wisdom and your being able to see what would be best for each tribe and such. And Lord, we thank you for these. And Lord, I just ask your blessing on these people and the different other services and groups and such that meet this week. And we ask all this in your name. Amen.
Thank you.